Got it. Let's go back. I can't go back. So thanks to CDSS for sponsoring this. I'm having a lot of fun and I appreciate you being there. Thanks to the Upper Valley Music Center, which is offering their space for me from which to stream, because if I were doing it from home, you would see nothing except me talking and it would be pretty boring. Tonight, we're going to be going west. We're going to be covering a lot of geography and also a lot of chronology. So stay with me. I'll try to make it clear where we are in all of this. I want to start in the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 40s, and squares at this point are reaching new audiences. I spoke last week about the record industry turning out race records and then turning out old time music appealing to a white audience. So that helped reach new audiences, but other popular media also hosted squares. In some cases, you see square dancing through very rose-tinted glasses, as in this little excerpt from a Gene Autry film from 1938.
Couples swayed, everyone was gay, the barn was full of hay, hay, hay. While they played turkey in the straw, they loved each other more and more. Do like Daddy did, just give yourself a chance. Find yourself the sweetest girl at the old barn dance.
And by the end of this clip, that old couple that you see there is dancing very majestically and everyone clapping and thinking about, oh, these are the old folks. The other place that we see a lot of square dances in this era are in Westerns, where there's frequently a high energy square dance in a saloon, and it almost inevitably leads to a barroom brawl, but it's a way of picking up the energy. By the time we get later on, this one's in the late 40s, square dancing is there, but it's not just in rural settings with hay on the floor and people in country garb. This one's very much in sort of mainstream America, and we see a variation of the Texas Star being called by one of America's premier crooners of the era.
Meet your partner, you ain't through yet. It's a four hands around with the couple you met. Four hands up and around you go, and when you get straight, it's a do-si-do. Chicken in the bread pan, picking up the dough. Grab your partners, home you go. Ladies to the center, back to the bar. Gents to the center, you form a star.
Bing Crosby actually has what it takes to be a caller. He's got a beautifully melodic voice and his timing is impeccable. So during this time, well, last week we saw some examples of people documenting squares in the South, Kentucky, Tennessee, but other people are doing it. Lynn Rohrbach and his wife, Catherine, the Cooperative Recreation Service in Ohio, were putting out these little pamphlets, although this one, the Play Party and the Square Dance book are actually spiral bound, bigger, but they produced 100 of these booklets. They printed them themselves in a little print shop out in their barn, and they shipped in all about 1 million copies going out for youth groups, church groups, the National Education Association, anyone involved in recreation. And one of the very cool things about what the Rohrbachs did is that in most of the books, they credit the source from which the dance was collected, which not everyone was doing. Also in the 40s, a testimony that dance is moving more into the mainstream is this program, The World of Fun, put out by the Methodist Church, a program that started in 1946 and expanded and was reissued in the late 50s. And it involved, as consultants, some people who really knew their stuff. Michael and Marianne Herman from the international folk dance world were consultants, part of it. Michael's orchestra did a lot of the recordings. Lawton Harris, who founded the Stockton International Folk Dance Camp in later years. May Gadd from CDSS was involved with the project. Richard Chase, very folklorist, very involved in Southern Appalachian stories and music. Ralph Page, the New England caller. Those of you in New England who have been dancing for a long time knew Ernie and Joan Spence. And The World of Fun was the program that got Ernie and Joan started as dancers. So squares are certainly moving into a larger audience. In New York City and Long Island, Ed Durlacher was calling in Central Park. His dances had as many as 1,000 squares. He also called at Jones Beach on Long Island, started a series that was later picked up by his son Don and then by Primo Fiore, a square dance series at Jones Beach that lasted 65 years. Here's a little of his square dance in Central Park.
Same gent up the center with a different gal. Bring them back to the whirly well. Pick them up and lay them down. Where you go all around the town. Separate, go round alone. Right elbow swing when you meet your own. Swing on the corner, swing around all. Swing your corner, lady. Swing your corner, lady. Swing them round and promenade your partner who wants around the town.
Durlacher published his book, Honor Your Partner, and also this series of records, Honor Your Partner, which started out as 78s and then was released as LPs and then as CDs. It is still in print from 1949 till now. And this was a series that had a strong presence in elementary schools in America. When gym teachers were teaching dance, Durlacher's series was well owned. The catalog, all the records are now part of the Smithsonian Folkways collection. So they'll be there for some time.
Honor your partner. Honor your corners. Shake a leg. My pretty red wing. The other way back, you're on the wrong track. Make your feet go wiggity wag. Heads ready. Face couple ready. Face couple right, you circle half, the inside couple arch. Dip and dive and away you go. The inside high, the outside low. Hurry, 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 let's go. Over and then below. I need dip right through to the other two, and you circle halfway around.
And on and on and on. So in post-World War II America, we see a vast upsurge of interest in square dancing. And a lot of that is spurred by dances coming from the West. So let's look at what those dances were, how they got there, and how that spread to affect American culture. The Mormons were a dancing culture. This illustration marks the occasion when members of the newly formed Mormon battalion was setting out from Iowa to fight in the Mexican-American War. Their destination was the Southwest and ultimately San Diego. The following year, 1847, the Mormons embarked on their big journey that took them to Salt Lake City. And on the trail, they would stop at night, set up camp, and frequently they would hold dances out on the prairie with people calling dances. You can see in this illustration here, someone fiddling. Many of the Mormons are coming from the northern states. The Church of Latter-day Saints started in New York, and then they moved to Illinois and then on to Iowa before heading west. So they're bringing a lot of dances from those regions with them out to the west. 1849, the California Gold Rush brought huge numbers of people to California. Up until that time, I've read that a total of 10,000 people had traveled to California overland. And in 2 years, 1849 and 1850, 70,000 made the trip. And they're coming, as you can see here on this map, of many different routes from many parts of the country. So in Gold Rush camps, you're bringing large numbers of people together coming from all different parts of the US. They danced. There were far more men than women. So men would, in this illustration, you see a guy wearing a hoop from a hoop skirt and a lady's bonnet, and they're dancing there. And people coming from different cultures are bringing different styles of dance and different tunes. So as we move west, we start to see in these settings a blend of styles emerging. Similarly, in logging camps, here's a logging camp, and you see it's all men and strutting and dancing together, and cowboys. People familiar with the whole gender-free dance notion that we're very involved with these days. Cowboys would frequently have a heifer branded man. This was someone with an armband indicating that he's dancing the ladies' part. Well, in this case, he's on the other side. Cowboy dances in Texas were a huge event. Social events were rare. We're talking the late 1800s, 1880s, out on the range. Again, a preponderance of men. Typically at a dance event, it would be 3-to-1 men, male, female, but could be significantly more than that. Often they were dancing in small spaces and everyone couldn't fit in. So one of the musicians would call out, for this next dance, men numbers 1 through 8, all the men would be given numbers, are allowed to dance, and the rest would stay out and wait until their number was called. And cowboys would come from far away to attend these dances. In 1882, at the Matador Ranch in Northwest Texas, there was a dance held in the ranch headquarters, which was a 2-room house. And attending the dance were 6 women who came from an area 100 miles across, and more than 50 men. In 1888, in Amarillo, at the first Grand Ball in Amarillo, which was held to celebrate the opening of the county courthouse, there were 5 ladies present and more than 100 men. Some of the cowboys had ridden 75 miles on their horses to get to the dance. The word spread, and people were there. I've been talking about people bringing dances from the East, but it's important to remember that in Texas and New Mexico and other areas of the Southwest, there were different routes of transmission. All the dances didn't come from the East Coast. Some came up from Mexico, including when France ruled Mexico, Maximilian and Carlotta in the 1860s. Southern California had their contradanzas, and the Southwest also danced las cuadrillas, the quadrille. And in this short example, you'll see a figure which is very similar to the Triumph, an English country dance dating back to the late 1700s, the Triumph or the Dorset Triumph. And this is part of a 5-part quadrille that was part of a New Mexico family's tradition, which they kept alive for all these many years. You see this little 2-step that they're doing, and that's going to appear later on in our talk. As we move into Texas in the 20th century, in the 30s, square dance contests become a regular part of Texan society, with different sets competing, a set being a team, essentially. And the one that got a lot of attention was Bob Sumrall and his Abilene set. They were youngsters when they formed in 1938, and they won the Texas State Championship that year and many other years as well. They perfected this very special 2-step way of moving. Ricky Holden, caller and dance historian, and who was there in Texas, wrote, "At one time, at every dance, the entire floor could be heard to move, everyone in unison with an almost mystical, magical sound. Shh, 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 shh." Well, they're doing this little shuffle step. And we have a silent footage from El Paso in 1939. So watch the footwork on this and look at how smooth the dancing is. You can see the gents' feet. You see that little shuffle that they're doing in there. Some nice choreography right here where they're in 2 sets of 4, balance, and then the gents are crossing over, facing out, balancing again. Oh, how I wish this had sound to it. So I mentioned in 38, Bob Summerall's team won the championship. In 1939, Herb Gregerson brought his Bluebonnet set 600 miles from El Paso across Texas to near Fort Worth to compete, and they took the championship that year. Champion square dancers show how they do it. Gregerson's team that fall traveled east. They performed for 2 days in Washington, D.C., and then went on to perform for 3 days at the 1939 World's Fair. Here's a little bit of Gregerson calling, and you'll notice his calls are directed to the first 4, which are the head couples, the first 4. So even though, as we'll learn, most of the dancing in Texas is based on the Southern visiting couple, Gregerson and others are also incorporating the more Northern quadrille style.
By your corner stand. Now forward 4s and fall back 4 and first 4 right hand star in the middle of the floor all the way round, and I don't get sore. Do an element left as pretty as you can. Right to you, honey, go right and left around that ring. The right foot up and a left foot down, and meet your honey 2 by 2. Promenade home as you always do. Promenade 'em, don't be slow. Now first 4, get ready. Here we go. It's first 4, forward up and back. Now forward again, pass on through.
Jumping ahead, Gregerson in 1950 made the first trip to New England to teach Western squares. He did 30 dances in 31 days and earned $100 a night in 1950. Western squares became very big. Another key figure in Texas dance history at this time is Jimmy Clausen, born in 1899, and early in his adult life, he worked as a cowboy on ranches in West Texas, New Mexico. He was a popular caller and a record producer. And I have a personal plea for everyone in the audience. Clausen never recorded himself as a caller. He produced albums of music and of other callers, but never himself. And if anyone knows of a live recording of Jimmy Clausen calling, I'd dearly love to add that to the Square Dance History Project. Other Texas things going on. Texas dancers were creating new routines, and I've picked the Teacup Chain written by Pat Lukowitz as an example. So it got its name, the Teacup Chain, because she worked it out on her kitchen table using teacups, and that would show which way people were facing. She tried it out with her home club, the Lone Star Square Dance Club in Austin, and from there it took off. This is a demo set being called by Mildred Bueller, a caller in Northern California, who the following year, 1952, moved with her family to England, and she was very active in promoting American squares in England.
Now the head lady's chain is off the floor. The side lady's chain and your chain no more. Now all 4 ladies' chain, and it goes out in the teacup chain. It's prettier picture you never did see. It's pretty good feel and it's pretty good see. Now the ladies whirling and next thing will I just keep turning and spinning about. The one going out, the other going in. Keep on going here over again. Now chain on through a second time. Keep on going, keep in line. And this one out, the other one in. It's busy enough to make your head spin. The discount sweet, the thousand. Swirling gems for room. You take Sally out the gate. Hurry home.
And we have a much longer example of her calling. It's really worth watching to get a real sense of what dancing was like in the early 50s. So we've been sort of talking around it. What is traditional Western squares? And I thought the best person to introduce this is Bill Lichman. Bill is an extraordinary caller himself, a dance historian, and was the past president of the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, and he knows traditional Western squares like few people do. So he's talking here, he started out talking about dances in Colorado that he encountered growing up. and then goes into a description of traditional Western.
The Western square has roots directly to the Southern dance, Southern square dance, the big circle and the square from Appalachia mainly. Movement of people into and out of Appalachia suggests that when they left and migrated away from their home place, which most younger sons would do naturally, they moved south and west and brought with them the music and the dance that they knew from home. And the Texas square and the Colorado dances are essentially the same. So to identify the traditional Western square, you look for the do-si-do. And the figures that are involved with the do-si-do, the visiting couple figures, or circles and serpentines and stars and arches and that kind of thing. No chains, no rights and lefts. That's right. And very few opposite couple figures.
So the do-si-do he's talking about is not the pass your partner by the right shoulder that we do in New England. And in fact, there was a big controversy in the square dance movement in the early 50s because the Westerners had their do-si-do figure and the New Englanders had their do-si-do figure, and they were completely different figures. And finally, Lloyd Shaw, whom we'll learn about a little bit later, brokered an agreement between the factions. He got Al Brundage, representing the New England contingent, and Herb Gregerson, whom we met, to basically shake hands and agree to call it, Shaw suggested calling it the Do Paso as a homage to El Paso, which is where Herb Gregerson came from. And that became the default term for the hand turn. So I thought we'd look at a few examples of Bill calling with dances from the West with a do-si-do figure in it. This is related to the Southern Appalachian figure, the Georgia Rangtang, AKA the Georgie Alabam, AKA Reel the Set. Rapid hand turns with your partner and with others, a lot of activity.
Lead out to the right, turn Sally Gooden with the right hand around and do-si-do, all the way around and the heel and toe, and they keep on walking down, they go on to the next with the right hand turn, and come back and then do-si-do, turn your partner left, all the way around in the middle of the set. Well, now you go on to the next, turn your corner, lady with the right hand round, and back to your partner's do-si-do. Keep on doing that, do-si-do.
And it does go on and on and on. He goes through many verses of singing Good Old Mountain Dew while people are dancing that do-si-do figure. Here's another one, the Arkansas Traveler.
Now get along home, square yourself with 2 and 4, go forward and back. Go back to the middle of the Arkansas Traveler, opposite right partner left. Now the opposite right partner left. Go to the corner now with the right hand round, right hand turn, come back to your on left hand turn, go to the corner, do-si-do, go back to that. Swing your corner, Jack, swing that curve around, you go and promenade on heel and toe, just promenade around it.
So dances from the West generally have brisker tempos than we use here in New England. Not as fast as Southern Appalachian, or certainly not as fast as Ozark, but faster than Northern. And so I thought to illustrate that, we'd take one dance, Darling Nellie Gray, here called by 2 eminent callers, each of whom was inducted into the Square Dance Hall of Fame in the year 1961. And the first one is Ralph Page.
Now the first couple balance to that couple on your right. You join hand circle once around, and you right and left over, and you right and left back, and swing with your darling Nellie Gray. Take her on.
And representing the Western contingent.
Now the head couples out to the couples on your right. Circle to your left and you circle to your right. You right and left them through and you right and left them back, and you all swing your darling Nellie Gray. Now the same couples lead.
Last week we heard from Tony Parks describing Northern squares, Northeastern squares, typically a bunch of figures that lead up to swing your partner. Or swing someone. And I thought here we will go with Al Brundage, a Connecticut caller who got very early involved in the new Western movement and helped teach it in New England. And he's going to be calling Texas Star the way he would call it as an Eastern caller. And then later we'll hear him calling it as he would if he were calling it for Western dancers.
4 ladies forward and back, boys center, star by the right. Go back by the left. Pass this girl, take the next. Arm round, star promenade. Now break and turn, a full turn on the ladies' star. Girls back out, a full turn again. Boys star by the left. Now bring her home. Everybody swing your partner. Promenade.
Everybody swing, promenade. And now he's going to call it Western style.
4 ladies forward, back to the bar, and boys center, make a right and star, star by the right. How deep do you go? Back to the left and the other way around. Pass this pretty girl by, pick out the next, your arm round, star promenade, don't slow down. Hey, break and turn, a full turn all the way around. The girls star as you come in. 4 ladies roll away, and boys star on the single way. You star by the right. Girls, you roll back outside the land, and you keep on going till you pass the man. Left hand to the next left alley man. Here we go, right and left grand. Hand over hand and meet your maiden. Promenade, gonna promenade. I'm a 2x8. Take a little walk in and don't be late. Hey, there you settle down. Girls, go forward up to the middle and the back.
So you can hear this continual, some would say incessant patter, just going on and on, keeping people moving. It certainly adds to the excitement level. So traditional Western, based on Southern Appalachian visiting couple, but some Northern figures showing up from time to time. Circular and arching figures dominate the prevalence of the do-si-do and the key role played by Texas. And I'd like to just pause here. Joanna, anything coming in on the chat that we should address at this point?
No questions at this moment.
Great. Let's just move on. We've got a lot to cover. Everyone take a deep breath. Here we go. So I'll let you read this. I don't need to insult you by reading it aloud. So late 1940s, square dancing is taking off. It's become a national craze. And the individual who more than any other person is responsible for that is Lloyd Shaw. In promoting traditional Western dance and getting people excited about it and excited about teaching it and bringing it to new audiences, a huge revival of interest in square dance throughout the country. Shaw was an educator. He was a high school teacher, a coach, a principal, and a superintendent. In fact, he went from being a high school teacher to being a superintendent in the span of 7 years. This was a man with a meteoric rise. He was a charismatic individual, had an incredible public persona, and was not unwilling to take risks. When he was a coach, his football team won the state championship in their division, and the following year, Shaw abolished football as an activity at the school, which caused some consternation among some students and certainly among some parents. Shaw argued that it was not appropriate for these young men to be treated as heroes because they happened to have the genetic makeup that made them big, strong, whatever, that he was looking for activities that all students could participate in. And to bring that about, he did all kinds of extraordinary things in his school. He had, he believed that life involved risk, and you should not shield children from risk. So the school provided experiences for students that are, shall we say, unusual. Here's a little home movie footage of the Jalopy Club. This is a school-sponsored activity. Parents contributed money, students bought an old car, stripped it down, and turned it into a dune buggy. There was the glider club. We have footage of them taking a glider, towing it behind a car and sending it up into the air. The playground structures at Cheyenne Mountain School would be banned from every American school today. The teeter-totters, which normally, well, you don't see seesaws anymore on playgrounds because they're too risky. At the Cheyenne Mountain School, they go like that. It's scary watching them. There was looking for ways to involve everyone. The school sponsored a rodeo. Students built the rodeo arena, the fences, the stockades for the animals, the bleachers for the spectators. And then the students went out and did a drive to bring the animals in that would be part of the rodeo, the steers for the bareback riding contest and the sheep, so that the little children could be involved in bareback riding as well. This small school yielded 3 future Colorado governors. So Shaw is actively looking for ways to involve students in activities. And then in 1922, in Denver, he hears Elizabeth Burchinell speak. And he has this epiphany that her folk dance program is just what he needs. He invites Burchinell to Colorado Springs. She comes, she teaches students, she teaches teachers, and he institutes a school-wide program of international folk dance in Colorado. And all grades, from the youngest primary grades up through high school. A dozen years later, Shaw is attending the Colorado Seed Show, the agricultural fair, and he sees a demonstration being put on by a group of old-time Colorado square dancers. And another light goes on. Aha! We've been doing international folk dance. This is the American folk dance. And he starts traveling around the state, collecting dances, and institutes square dancing as an activity for the high school students. It's an adult activity. The folk remains for the younger students. He forms a demonstration team, the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers, and there's strong competition to get on the demo team. You needed to be a good dancer and you needed to have really good grades. If you're on the team, you would tour initially in Colorado, but then going farther afield. Their first trip east to the National Folk Festival in 1939. After that, they went up to New York City and performed. They went to Bennington College, a progressive educational institution with a strong dance program. They danced and performed in Chicago on their way back to Colorado. And interestingly, when he's later teaching the following year, Shaw's first Institute for Teachers and Recreation Leaders is in Chicago. The Cheyenne dancers excited crowds all over America. Wherever they went, people were just blown away. Now, part of that is that they were really good dancers. Part of it is that they had wonderful styling. People were fascinated. Dr. Shaw, how did you teach your students this? And part of it is that Shaw was a showman, and he incorporated into the choreography for the dancers some routines that really were geared toward keeping an audience engaged. They looked good on stage. And what I'm going to play you now is a short example. This was filmed as a silent movie, but I've synchronized it to the record that they were using to dance to. So it gives you a pretty good sense of what it's like. And you'll notice that each time through, the lead couple is doing a different figure. There are figures that it's a visiting couple dance, but it's not the same thing each time through. And we have 3 of these up on the Square Dance History Project site.
All
set, boys. Everybody in your places. Straighten up your faces, tighten up your traces for another long pull. All right, boys, let's go. Now it's honors right and honors left. Now we'll all join hands and circle to the left. Now we'll break and swing and promenade home. It's promenade, boys, promenade. First couple out, the couple on the right, with the lady round the lady and the gent so low. Now the lady round the gent don't go. Oh, hands up and here we go. Round and around and a do-si-do. Do and a do, a little more dough. Chicken in the bread tray picking up the dough. One more change and on we go. Now it's two gents swing with the elbow swing. It's opposite partners elbow swing. Now two gents with the very same thing. And now your partner's elbow swing. Circle four, oh, circle four. Do-si-do with the gent you know. Lady go see and the gent go do. One more change and on we go. Second couple, follow up. Now I'll swing your girl, you swing mine. By golly, ain't that fine? You swing your girl, I'll swing mine. I'll swing my girl every time. His four hands up.
And away we go. And people were just fascinated by this. In 1939, Shaw published his Cowboy Dances. He did not credit the sources for the dances he collected in Colorado, which is a great loss for us. But some have noted that there were other uncredited sources. Ricky Holden, talking about this style of dancing that emerged, refers to it as the Iacocca style, Iowa, Colorado, California, and says, why Iowa? Well, this booklet is the reason. Boyd and Dunleavy, 1925, 14 years before Shaw's book, published Old Square Dances of America, which is a collection of dances from Iowa. Now, Neva Boyd came from Chicago. She founded the Recreational Training School at Hull House in Chicago. Think back to our first session here with Jane Addams, the progressive reformers, settlement houses in Chicago, the settlement schools in Eastern Kentucky. We're going back to Elizabeth Burchinell again here with group games and gymnastics, dancing and recreation. What Ricky Holden and others have pointed out is that the basic organization of their booklet is eerily similar to that of Shaw's Cowboy Dance. And I've got one slide. Here's Dunleavy and Boyd and their organizational structure, right and left through group. Well, Lloyd Shaw, surprise, has a right and left group. And Shaw's book is much larger. He includes much more patter, but it does appear that he was strongly influenced by this Iowa text and was uncredited. In any case, Cowboy Dances becomes an incredibly influential text and leads to the popularity of cowboy being associated with this style of dance. The team got widespread publicity, of course, so they gave up football. Was a natural lead for a newspaper, and this is an Associated Press full-page spread that was shared across the AP network. This is a story from the Saturday Evening Post with wonderful, wonderful photographs. Once World War II ended, Shaw started up his summer institutes. He had done the one in Chicago, postponed, put off the others during the war, and people started flocking to Colorado Springs to learn from him, to find out how he had done it. A focus on dance, the actual figures from the West that Shaw was interested in, instruction in how to teach it, how to motivate people, and an opportunity to share a dancing philosophy. Shaw himself would speak, and his wife, Dorothy Stott Shaw, who was a poet and an eloquent speaker, would talk about dance in an almost spiritual way, that it's not just going through a bunch of figures, but draw linkages with the ancients, with the Egyptians, with the Greeks, with primitive man, with the pulse beat of humanity. So people going to Colorado Springs were not just learning dance figures, they were becoming imbued with a whole dance as a metaphor for life. Shaw's motto was keep it clean, keep it simple, keep it folk. And people came back from Colorado Springs by the hundreds and started teaching this style of dancing in their home communities. I want to play some examples of what we think of now as transitional Western dancing, sort of moving from traditional to incorporating new elements. This is a soundy released in 1949. Jim Boyd is the brother of Bill Boyd, noted in Western swing. And you'll notice in this, you'll see two couples interacting, two sets of two couples interacting. So everyone involved, smooth flow, lots of activity for all, as in that do-si-do hoedown, less standing around, good for demonstration. And you'll see both the do-si-do and the do-si-do, two styles before the agreement had been arranged on what to call things. So just a little of this clip. Northern figures. So we had both. We had the northern do-si-do there and the western do-si-do in that little clip. Also in 1949 is what I think is the first commercial recording made at a live dance. And this is Bud Udick calling it the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs. Bud's brother was on that first Cheyenne mountain dancers group that went to Washington, D.C. And you'll notice in the liner notes here, don't use monotonous records where all the couples do the same thing. So we're starting to see this notion of different figures getting called. And here it's classic traditional Southern figures that have moved west.
First couple out to the right and around that couple and take a little peek and back to the center and swing your sweep. Round that couple and a peek once more and back to the center and swing all four.
So as we move into the late 40s, early 50s, squares are taking off. Lloyd Shaw was aided in this a great deal by Bob Osgood coming out of Los Angeles. Osgood was an ardent follower of Lloyd Shaw. He created a magazine, Sets in Order, and the very first issue of Sets in Order features the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers on the cover. The mountain dancers were coming out to Southern California, and Osgood was actively promoting them there. The magazine started in 48, and somewhere between 15 and 30 million Americans participate in this form of dance. Sets in Order was the big national publication. The other one was American Squares. Sets in Order focused almost exclusively on this new style, this Western style that Lloyd Shaw was promoting. American Squares, especially in the early 50s under the editorship of Ricky Holden, took a much broader view of squares, including New England squares and traditional squares from the South. Ricky Holden is a fascinating figure. That the whole separate talk. He was a director of recreation in San Antonio in the 40s, and that's when he came in contact with traditional Texas squares. He taught Texas squares at the New England Folk Festival back in Massachusetts. He promoted Texas squares nationwide. In 1956, he published the Contra Dance book, which was a collection of all the contra dances that had been printed up until that point. In the early 60s, as we'll learn, he co-authored Instant Hash, a new approach to calling square dancing. He toured the world teaching international folk dance and ended up living in Europe, where he was the representative of folk craft. So American Squares and Sets in Order are documenting and spreading the word about square dancing going on. In 1950, we see what was billed as the world's largest square dance in Santa Monica, California, celebrating the Diamond Jubilee. Lloyd Shaw was an MC at that, and he was coming to the event in a car with Governor Earl Warren of California. And they were 15 minutes late getting to the stage because the car could only travel so fast because people kept wanting to shake hands, not with Governor Warren, but with Lloyd Shaw. And here's a part of a newsreel clip documenting that event.
7,500 couples, 15,000 square dancers. Do-si-do, dig for clams, and generally have a swinging good time. It's the world's largest square dance, celebrating the Diamond Jubilee of Santa Monica, California. Folks from all over the state and as far away as Arizona dance for 5 hours.
Just an amazing, amazing thing. And the audio from that event is available online. You can find a link to it at the Square Dance History Project. Buddy Weaver has digitized it, cleaned it up, and you can hear all 37 callers and get a sense of what the dancing was at that time. This is July 1950. The following month is the release of Hillbilly Hair.
Shake like a hound dog, shake again, wallow around in the old pig pen, wallow some more, you'll know how, roll around like an old fat sow, element left with your left hand, follow through with the right and left brand, now leave your partner in the dirty old thing, follow through with an elbow swing, grab a fence post, hold it tight, whomp your partner with all your might, hit him in the shin, hit him in the head, hit him again, the critter ain't dead.
Once again, hillbillies make their presence in square dancing. And it's an image that modern square dancing has been trying to live down for 70 years. The following year, Osgood produced a film to promote squares, which was widely distributed.
10 star and the first lady out, and you form twos, one like Venus and one like Mars. Now the girls lead in and the gents lead out, and you turn those two stars round about. Now the girls go out and the gents go in, and you turn your two stars round again. Now find your honey, that pretty little maid, and you hop right onto a star harmony. Now the girls go in with her, turn around like a jaybird walking on a frozen ground, go all the way and it don't fall down.
In the 1950s, a group of young people who had been dancing in Colorado colleges got summer jobs working with the Central City Opera, Central City, Colorado. So they were graduates of square dance teams at the University of Colorado in Boulder and other colleges around the state. And they worked in the summer doing jobs for the opera. The opera would end and let spectators out. The dancers would parade down the street and lead everyone into a hall and would put on a square dance demonstration. This is a program that continued until the mid-1970s. And we're fortunate to have a film from 1955, silent film made by Ed Austin, who himself was one of these college kids. He graduated and got a job with Eastman Kodak, which gave him access to Kodak movie cameras. And he put together a 15-minute film documenting the Central City scene. And I'm going to play just a little bit of it to give you a sense of the styling of these dancers who were very much influenced by Lloyd Shaw. So silent footage. Notice the women's arms. Remember back to our first session with the minuet and all the arm movement they were doing there. You can see why this would appeal to audiences. I mean, it's very flashy and very smooth. And at some point in this routine, couples sit down and there's just two couples left in the center, and they do some traditional Colorado figures. Not. Now, you can bet that Shaw did not pick that up from his research into backwoods Colorado. In fact, it comes from Danish folk dancing. Remember his background in international folk dance all those years. So he's incorporating figures into these routines to to create all kinds of excitement. The caller, visible back there, is Ray Smith from, of course, Texas. And Ray Smith was hired by CDSS to call Western squares at Pinewoods for 2 summers in the early 50s. May Gadd, writing in the Country Dancer, this is the predecessor to the CDSS News, wrote, "Ray is an excellent teacher as well as caller, and he was able to show us that the dances have the smoothness and grace as well as the vitality that is inherent also in the English Playford and traditional country dances." And here's a little clip of Ray Smith, a live recording of him calling in the mid-50s.
Now first and third go forward and back. 2 and 4 go forward and back. First and third up the swing, face the outside of the ring. Inside out, outside in, and outside out, and the inside in, and a boogie back. Can you do it again?
So I showed you some examples of these college students dancing. Well, it wasn't just adults and teenagers who were getting involved, but children's square dance groups. So this is from Steamboat Springs, 1951. Notice the boys' hands there, sort of very much the style that Shaw and others were teaching. So it's spreading. As we move on, squares become this huge cultural phenomenon in the early 50s. Recreation departments around the country are offering classes. Lines form around the block to join the classes. They need to offer more sessions, find more halls. Square dancing is on an extraordinarily fast growth path. There's a lot of speculation about why it took off then, and I don't have an answer. Certainly part of it is in World War II, we have families being separated, typically men overseas and women at home, raising families or working in the factories, filling in the jobs, Rosie the Riveter. And so the men are back, the families are together, and they're looking for activities to do. And this is clearly an activity that's well suited for couples to go out and have a night together. I speculate, and I have absolutely no proof about this, is that part of what may have factored in is you have a generation of men who are coming out of the Army, where they have practiced close order drill, face left, face right, display your guns, etc. Used to someone, a drill sergeant, barking out commands and learning to respond rapidly to that. And that fits well into this style of dancing. If someone has evidence of that or can disprove it, I'd love to know. But squares are huge. Here we are in 1964, California. I tried counting. I think we have 16 dancers across in a line. And going back, as far as I can tell, there's about 1,000 people in that room. Squares become part of advertising and are used in many ways to tap into this cultural phenomenon. So one really good example is this one.
Places all join hands, circle left. Now circle right and listen to me. LS, MFT. Elementary corners like swinging on a gate. To right to your honey with the right and left 8. Grand right and left around you go. Lucky strike means fine tobacco. Meet your honey and give her a whirl. All swing around with the little girls. Smoke 'em, then you'll see. LS, MFT.
So you don't put together a commercial like that unless your audience is going to know what you're talking about. And clearly people know what's going on. to this day, if you stop a random person on the street and ask them, what do you know about contra dance? You'll get blank looks. But if you stop that same person and say, what do you know about square dance? You'll have people, yeehaw, do-si-do, swing your partner, clap their hands. Square dance becomes part of American popular culture at this point. And just some other examples. Lucky Strike was not the only company that was using square dancing. I'm going to play a little music to go along with this next montage. It's an audio clip by Jerry Helt, who was a caller for more than 60 years. He died recently.
Head ladies chain 3/4. Side men turn the girl. Side men roll them away a half sachet. Forward 6 to the middle and back. 6 to the middle, make a 6-hand right hand star all the way around. The head ladies drop out and swing your man as pretty as you can. The others turn the star in the middle. Everybody find the corner. Alabama left for the corner. Swing your partner there. Sides face, grand square.
So one of those clips had an ad for beer, and some of the square dance organizations protested. They really were trying to show that this was a clean activity. The paper dolls, something's mainstream if there are paper dolls being produced to promote it. And yes, our friends, the hillbillies, are with us here, looking very much the women there are looking like Daisy May out of Al Cap's Little Abner. So some examples of just a few of what we think of as sort of transitional, late traditional Western squares. This is a dance written by Herb Gregerson, whom we met earlier, from 1948.
Side couples now lead on out to the right of the ring. Separate now and take 3 swings and center 4. You form a ring and pass through. Take 3 swings. You form a ring, go once around and separate. You pass through, take 3 swings, center 4. You form a ring and take 3 swings. Now form a ring. Pass through, circle up 4, go half around. Now shoot them through. Everybody home, everybody swing.
I'm here to testify doing that dance is fun, and you can imagine why people would have a good time. You are just moving. Larry Edelman, who's calling this one also, calls this dance one of his favorites. And it's sort of marking this transition between traditional and modern squares. It combines figures from the around the set visiting couples style and the across the set quadrille, and it keeps dancers active more than you might find in either tradition by itself. And dances from this period tend to be the favorite style of contra dancers today who like squares. One of the dancers here, you'll see Tony Parks in this. You'll see Bill Lichman wearing a blue shirt dancing, and Bill came out of the Lloyd Shaw style, and you'll see how smoothly he moves.
Head couples out to the right, lady around a lady and it didn't follow. Ladies now with the right elbow, gen around gen. Ladies follow your partner. Gents hook left elbows, ladies wait. Star promenade. Heads face left and the ladies chain. Head to right, left through, courtesy whirl. Now same 2, chain to the left. Now head, go right and left through. Face left and the ladies chain. And head 2, go right and left through. Heads you face left and the ladies chain. Head 2, cross trail through. Alabama left, you're gonna get grand right and left, chain left.
So what's changing at this point? Well, in the way that the dances are taught, what is it that people are learning to do at Shaw's summer classes? And one of the things they're learning is to set up classes at home. And Jim Mayo, who was the first chairman of Caller Lab and was on the Caller Lab Board of Governors for 40 plus years, will be our guide to this section.
You don't have a class for traditional square dancing. In modern square dancing, you don't have a modern dance without a class. Everybody who comes into modern square dancing takes some number of lessons. The basic difference is the teaching of a set of terms rather than a set of dance routines. We teach terms and then we use those terms in flexible, varying ways.
Initially, a class was 6 weeks, and that taught you the number of figures that you needed to be able to participate in the activity. And what I'd like to do now is play some examples of a few callers from the 40s moving into the 50s as this style is starting to become established. Ed Gilmore from California led numerous caller workshops. He was one of the first to take a routine and break it down into specific figures that could be taught. And if you're interested, Gilmore's syllabus from 1949 is easily available on the web, and you can find it on the Square Dance History site.
Now bow to your partner, your corner, swing, swing the corner, swing and let it go round and around and circle that feet, go round town, circle to the left and around you go. Right about now, don't pass up, partner left and the corner right, back to the ditty like an almond bar, and walk along backwards where you are. Back 'em up, boys, the right hand star, shoot that star with the right and left grand, right and left go round the ring, hand over hand till you meet your maid, kick your lady and you promenade, promenade 'em right on home, swing your girl, leave mine alone.
Wonderful. I'd love to lead a whole session, a listening session for people sometime, just focused on the great callers of the 50s. They are mellifluous, most of them. The calls are clearly enunciated, crisp, and also entertaining. They are the lead instrument in the band. And if you look on the web for Square Dance Hall of Fame, a site that I created a year or so ago, it has the nearly 36 members of the Square Dance Hall of Fame with examples of each of them calling. And it's just wonderful to listen to them. One of my favorites from Southern California is this guy, Arnie Cronenberger.
Now pass through, come around, 149 you stand. Go forward, up and back with you and forward again. Now pass through. Join hands, arch in the middle, the ends turn in, right and left, two in the middle. Turn around and pass through, come around to one, a line of four, here we go, it's forward, up, and back with you, arch in the middle, the ends duck two, go round one. Walk down the middle and cross trail, split the ring, go round one, into the middle and box the net, right and left two, the other way back. Turn around, pass through, an element left to an element dar. Go right and left and you form a star, gents, back in the right-hand star, and you walk along backwards, not too far.
Joe Lewis played accordion and had outfitted his accordion electronically, so different ranges on the accordion would make completely different sounds. So with his accordion, he could sound like a one-man orchestra, and he would do corporate gigs in the 50s and could earn $500 or $1,000 for a night's work.
It's the Alabama Jubilee. Four little ladies promenade inside the ring. Go back and swing that guy, swing and swing. Sashay that corner girl, one time around. You're gonna bow to your partner now, then swing that guy, go round and round. Four men promenade inside the hall. Go back and sashay, go round them all. That corner girl, give her a swing. Take her around the ring to that Alabama Jubilee.
Someone with a less mellifluous voice, but very influential, was Les Gocher, who popularized hash calling. We'll talk a little more about that later. Very popular, traveled with a flamboyant wardrobe, one of many.
Join your hands, make a big ring and circle left to the pretty little thing with a lady on the right, California twirl. With a lady on the right, a half sashay. With a lady on the right, California twirl. With a lady on the right, a half sashay. With a lady on the left, a left dollar man. And here we go, right and left grand. Hand over hand, right and left grand, hand over hand. You promenade, go around the ring and promenade that pretty little thing. Promenade it till you get straight. And ahead two ladies chained to the right. Now keep this girl in promenade, don't slow down, just keep on going, don't slow down. And 1 and 3, wheel around and dive through, go on to the next 2 and 4, California twirl.
Notice there, he's having both head couples going out to the right, sort of picking up the activity level. So in this time, the 40s into the 50s is a transitional time. The callers are mostly calling memorized routines. So Sets in Order magazine is publishing lots of dances, and a dance is a whole routine. Here's Ends Turn In by Ed Gilmore. Initially, it would be calling a routine for all four couples, but then a caller might call one routine for the head couples and a different routine for the side couples. And then that would gradually morph into calling, when couple number one did something, you'd have one routine. When couple number two did it, you'd have a different routine. And as we move into the 1960s, we can really see the start of modern square dancing with some fundamental changes. And here to talk us through the way modern square dancing is organized is Clark Baker.
With the establishment of Color Lab, we tried for better standardization, and we developed a dance program called the Mainstream program, which today has 69 calls on it. And when I say call, I'm talking about circle left, circle right, Alaman left, do-si-do. Next after that is a dance program called Plus, which has another 30 calls in it. Beyond that, there is a pair of dance programs that go under the name of Advanced, and they're divided in half. There's 40 calls in Advanced 1 and 40 calls in Advanced 2. And then beyond that is Challenge, and they have about 80 calls in Challenge 1, maybe another 80 calls in Challenge 2. Challenge 3 became a little large for people to learn, and it got divided. So Challenge 3A probably has 70, and 3B has another 70. And then Challenge 4, which is the top or highest level that we talk about. It's not the case that we know all the calls, but Challenge 4 has about another 400 calls. So I like to say that all told, there's 1,000 calls that a C4 dancer knows.
Color Lab was established in 1974 as a way of trying to bring order to the square dance universe. As we moved from the late 60s into the early 70s, people were inventing calls right and left, as it were. Some 200 calls would get added to the Square Dance Burleson's Square Dance Encyclopedia every year. For callers, it was a way of leveling the floor, evening things out. If you introduced a new figure, no one there would know it. So you'd have an opportunity to teach it to everyone. It was also a way to build your brand, that you came up with something new, and dancers were always looking for something new. When Color Lab was established, it was to help callers and dancers sort of avoid what was becoming this rapidly spiraling, never-ending series of calls. Over time, new programs were invented. But the idea is that if you went to a class and you learn mainstream, you can go to a dance billed as mainstream and know that the caller will only be using figures from the mainstream vocabulary.
The other thing that is essential to the modern is that the dance action changes as it's called.
And this is possible because instead of learning routines, callers now are learning different methods of moving people around on the floor. In 1961, this book, Instant Hash, came out along with two others, one by Les Gocher, which popularized this notion of hash calling so that the dancers have no idea what's coming next. And this completely changes the nature of square dancing from traditional squares. Your callers are not relying on complete routines that have been taught, and dancers are lining up and not knowing what's coming. In the 50s, it's published routines. In 61, it's these new systems for creating choreography. And this is what is how modern square dancing operates today. Another fundamental change came the following year in 1962 with the introduction of a call swing through. So you have 4 dancers in a wave alternating directions. And swing through is turn by the right halfway, turn by the left halfway. Traditional dancers would do it in 8 counts with different calls, or today you might do that in 4 counts. But in the modern style that was emerging, it was defined as a 6-count figure. And if you have a 6-count figure, all the traditional tunes are, the vast majority of the traditional tunes are 8 counts in a musical phrase. So if you call a 6-count figure, anything that comes after that, unless you consciously work to get back into multiples of 4, 8, 16, is going to be off the melody, off the phrase. And at this point, the music changes. Suddenly, the music is competing with the dancers. It's working against you. And at that point, the square dance recordings take the melody and bring it way down in the mix, and take the rhythm and bring it up. And so dancers are no longer dancing to a musical phrase, but dancing to a beat. Here's what that looks like when it's done well. The idea is dancers line up, form their squares, wait for the calls, and then do what the caller tells them to do. Contra dancers who go to a contra medley, that's the same thing. You have no idea what's coming, but you know the vocabulary of figures, and you're waiting to see what the caller throws at you and to show them that you know how to do it.
Swing through again, and now the girls hold, feel your top. Why not do a run through and head there, pop, and then pass through, wheel and deal you do. A double pass through, face your partner, spar through, and then zoom there. Swing through in the middle of the track, you two. Boys gonna run around that girl and bend your line, leap to the right, pass through that balance line. Here she comes. Break right and left, go right and left, her flag on the right and roll them.
Here's another example from the Phil Donahue show, where he did a whole show featuring square dancing. It's an hour long. It's on the Square Dance History site. It's worth watching.
Then when you get back home, it's first and third. You move to the middle and back. Why don't you square through to get about 4? Hey, make 4 you do to meet your honey do do side do. One time make a wave and balance there, and then you swing through. Now spin your top, the boy move up. Meet a girl and then do the right left through. 8 to the girl, you go 8 to the middle, and then come on back and start through. You better veer to the left and Ferris wheel one time. In the middle you do the right left through, and then roll that girl a half sachet. Turn through her the middle. Hey, left island man, the Alamo style. Run home and balance there. Why don't you swing through, go right to the left, and then you swing through once more. You walk right in at a right left grand. Now the middle little girl and promenade to go to 2 by 2. Then get your girl, go all the way around. Get your honey, go 2 by 2. When you get back home, and then side couples. When you get back home, you face. Everybody do a grand square.
We don't normally think of square dancing as part of the black experience. Now, how am I doing? Would you agree?
Yes, I'd agree.
And your interest came from where? Neighborhood folks?
From her. That's how I met her at work, and she was into it, and she got me involved.
So you have new challenges. I assume some callers are more challenging than others, is that right?
Yes, they're a lot more challenging. It's a challenge to the mind as well as dancing, and I love to dance.
Right. You can't drink a lot of beer and do this, can you?
No. It boggles the mind, and you need your mind as clear as possible.
Yeah. Now, some callers can get up there and actually ad-lib, huh?
Most of them do.
Yes. Who's a caller? You call, huh? Women, this is not a sexist activity then. Women call as often and as successfully as men do.
Some of us do, yes.
Yes, I'm sure you do.
25 years.
No kidding. Did you drag him in, or did he drag you?
My husband? Yeah. I dragged him.
You glad you did?
Yes, I enjoy it.
So the woman there is Swerzy Dumetz Norris, who she says she's been calling for 25 years. This is in 1980. So going back to the mid 50s when this is taking off.
The other big difference is the club. There were clubs in traditional, but not many. The club as a group of people dedicated to, with a name, with a costume, with a group spirit, a social entity, is I believe a more important part of modern dancing than modern dancing realizes.
And we'll stick with this group in Chicago. Here's a photo of the Chicago Hashers in 1963. They had anywhere from 3 to 7 squares on a Friday night. I've learned about them from dancer and folk dance leader Paul Collins. Here he's dancing with his mom in 1963. And he has stories about when their group integrated the Illinois State Square Dance Convention at McCormick Place on Chicago's lakefront in the early 60s. He says there were some good times and some rather unpleasant incidents at these conventions. So an active Black square dancing community in Chicago. At its peak, there were up to 8 Black square dance clubs in Chicago. One of them, the one that Swersey Norris led, was Swersey's Squares, and most of the dancers in that group were teachers or they worked in the Chicago public school system. Remember, that's where Lloyd Shaw did his first class in 1940 in Chicago. In recent years, with the decline of modern Western squares, all those groups have merged and they've formed one group called Southside Squares. And one of the members of that group is Sandy Bryant, a modern Western caller, especially active in advanced and challenge calling. And she is called at square dance camps around the world, from Vienna to Germany to Japan.
Spin, scooted weave, quarter through, swing through the 1.5, and a regular grand.
Clark Baker mentioned the advanced program and challenge dancing. It's not just figures, there are also what they call concepts. So, for instance, whenever you have 2 people working together as a couple, whoever is on the left is the bow and whoever's on the right is the bell. It could be 2 men, 2 women, not necessarily you and your original partner. There's a concept as couples. So the caller might say, as couples, do-sa-do, which means that you and your partner together as a unit would do-sa-do another couple. You have phantoms where you're dancing with imaginary dancers in your outside your set. There's a concept concentric, which means if you have dancers, 8 dancers, 2, 2, 2, and 2, the inner 4 would do the next call with each other, and the outer 4 would do the call. And so these concepts add to the complexity. This is a look at some of the figures that Lee Kopman created. He was the caller on the Donahue show. And we'll give you a little example of C4 dancing.
Left swing through, half crazy, leads run the top. Do a diamond chain through. Trade circulate, ding ding, presto. Half crazy, leads run the wheel. In tandem, left wing diamond circulate. Do a lickety split the lock. Central cross counter. Shift 1, relay the do-see.
I asked Clark once, so how many dancers are there who dance well at the C4 level? And he paused and said, do you mean in the US or in the world? And I said, I don't care. He said, well, let's see. In Japan, there's Yukio. He started naming specific individuals. And he finally said, well, maybe 150, maybe 200 people. And I grinned and said, well, you must have fun on a Friday night when you all get together for your local dance. So dancers who are operating at this program don't have many opportunities to dance together regularly in large numbers, although there's a lot of dancing that would go on, a group of 8 people who would get together and dance in someone's garage, dancing to recorded tapes that would get sent around, or now it would be digital files. There has been a steady decline in the numbers of people doing modern square dance. The National Square Dance Convention at its peak attracted 40,000 dancers. When I went in 2015 in Springfield, Mass, they barely reached 4,000. It's sometimes, I think people in traditional circles sometimes deride modern square dancing. The costumes and the necessity of taking classes, they see it as regimented stop and go, but that's not inherent in the dance form. And for people who want challenge, I'm always having contra dancers who want more complicated dances. And I tell them, if you want complexity, go to modern squares, because you can find it at whatever level you choose. The dance form itself can be done really smoothly, keep your mind engaged and keep you moving. Younger dancers in a few places are keeping that style alive. These are dancers from tech squares at MIT, where they learn mainstream and plus in a total of 13 weeks. It would take most dancers about 2 years to get to that point. And so here's just an example. They're dancing at the plus program with caller Ted Lazat.
Head square through. Swing through. Boy run around the girl. Couples circulate. Chain down the line. Send her back with a Dixie style. Trade the wave. All 8 circulates. Swing through here. Boy run around a girl. Bend the line. Load the boats. Single circle, make a wave. AC doocy. Boy run around the girl. Chain down the line.
I recorded this, and you can see the whole patter call. And there's also a singing call set to Sweet Home Alabama. And you'll find those on the Square Dance History site if you look for tech squares. So I have about 10 more minutes maybe, but I thought this would be a good place to pause and see if anyone has anything that they'd like to ask. Joanna, you got anything?
Yeah, so there have been a number of questions and people have been great about answering them in the chat, but I think an interesting one is, when did the terminology change to using boys and girls?
I don't know. I do know that it's the standard, and it's also the standard for the gay square dance callers. There's an association of gay square dance callers, and they also use boys and girls and have a wonderful description of why they do that, in part because it's the norm in the non-gay clubs. It also is the norm around the world. And so someone who learns to call or to dance to that terminology can dance anywhere in the world and knew boys and girls. It also means that dancers in gay clubs can invite in a caller who's not from that community, and they can call in the way they're used to. And similarly, someone who's learned to dance in a gay club can go and dance in any other club, and they know the terminology. I don't know when it started out specifically, and maybe someone can answer that, but that's the norm.
And there have been some other questions that have been answered in the chat, and so we will share the chat after the presentation and the follow-up.
Great. So young people are not, for the most part, dancing modern squares. In part, it's a long learning curve. In the contra world, there's some interest again in squares. When I started dancing in the 70s, squares were inextricably linked in an evening's program. We went through a horrible period, which some communities, I'm on my soapbox here, still are in, where people boo and walk off the floor when a square is announced. Many of us hear that a square is announced and just let out a cheer and rush out onto the floor. There are dancers, the standard, well, I don't like squares, but I like your squares. Callers like Lisa Greenleaf and Kathy Anderson have a well-deserved strong following. People especially like their squares from the early 50s, and complex squares, things like Dutch crossing, that double square. Bob Isaacs has gotten quite a following with his grid squares, which are related to exploding squares in modern square dancing. There's also a resurgence over the years in old-time squares, whether it's old-time traditional Western squares or Southern Appalachian squares. And my sense is that this is the one area in the broad country dance universe, English, contras, squares, that really has seen an upsurge in recent years. So I want to spend just a little time on that phenomenon to close out this session. Last week, there was a question about women callers in traditional Northern and Southern. There are some, not as many as we might wish, but definitely in the revival. I mentioned Lisa and Kathy, and Sandy Bradley played a vital role in bringing traditional Western squares to people, and also getting women callers excited about calling squares. So here's just a taste of Sandy calling.
Now couple number 4, boys, couple down, boys, couple swing. Now check number 4, you stay there, the lady lead out, brother right of the square, and circle up 3. And it's up to the gent to cheer or swing. After it chooses these stays there too, ladies lead brother right of the square, and circle up 4. And it's up to the gent to cheat or swing. After it chooses these stays there 3, ladies lead brother right of the square, and circle up 5.
And this album is available online. If you go looking for Potluck and Dance Tonight, Sandy Bradley, you can find the entire album and the liner notes with all the calls. It's a wonderful gift to the community. It's there with Sandy's permission. Here's a little of her talking.
The thing that I thought was crippling people's attitude towards dance was rules. You know, you have to do this, you have to swing like that, you have to get it right. And it doesn't have anything to do with getting it right. So I wanted to scrape all that burden off of it. So I never tried to say, you had to do it like this. If they did it some other way, well, then the easy way is the right way, and I ought to be calling it like that. If that makes more sense to them, do that. There's no better sign. If somebody always makes a certain mistake in a dance, then that really ought to be it, you know? They're doing something that, if it occurs to everybody, it ought to be occurring to us as callers, too.
Sandy Bradley was my mentor, even though she only did a little bit to be my mentor. I just watched her, and her teaching was what attracted me first, because she was able to teach so quickly. She'd teach 2 different figures and get the square going and nothing flat. And so the part of me that was new to dance said, wow, how did she do that? How did she make us get this so quickly? So that was my gold standard, the Sandy Bradley teaching.
Here's Sandy, just a little clip of her teaching at Pinewoods in 1980.
Between the members of the outside couple and around just 1 to a line of 4. Forward, up, 8, and back, 2. Forward again, pass, right through. 4 join hands at the ends, turn in the inside, arch in the outside, through, circle inside, 4, turn the outside, 2. Then center is pass through, you're facing your corner, out man left. You don't walk between them that second time through, you just aim for them. Okay? Everybody home.
And then she would launch into a dance, and people would go. Sandy, of course, played a vital role in launching the vigorous Seattle dance scene. And there's a wonderful timeline that Sherry Nevins created of Seattle traditional dance. Here's a more detailed look. And I would love it if people in dance communities around the country would do the research and put together projects like this to show where your group has been. It wasn't just in Seattle. Sandy toured and inspired a raft of callers. This is Sis Hinkle, Sherry and Suzanne out in Seattle, Bridget Edwards, Bonnie Blair in the Pioneer Valley, Marion Rose memorized Potluck and Dance Tonight, Masha Goodman in Chicago. Susan Kevra told me that, well, she came later than Sandy, but she got a copy of Potluck and Dance and just mined that for the pattern. Pam McKeever brought Sandy to Albuquerque, and Pam was also greatly influenced by Lloyd Shaw. She had danced Lloyd Shaw style dancing when she was in college. A whole raft of young square dance callers coming out of places like Pittsburgh, which was a hotbed of squares. Ron Buchanan was composing squares and calling. Larry Edelman was doing research, collecting dances. Dolores Hagee was immersing herself in Appalachian square dance. And here's just a short clip of Dolores at Todd Whittemore's VFW series.
Another one, but only a little bit different, a little bit faster and a little bit, no, wait a minute. Like you did before, last year, everybody, all you guys, give a light to your corner, go left, and you come around, a left, and around, and a right, to your corner, when you come down, and a left, to your corner, go all the way around,
Pop Wagner, musician, was in Seattle in 1979 and saw a Monday night square dance, Sandy Bradley, and helped start up the Minneapolis dance, which is still going on, Monday night dance.
Whenever people get together to have fun, one of the things they like to do is dance. Hi there, I'm Pop Wagner, and I'm down here at the Moose Hall in Northeast Minneapolis, where the Monday Night Square Dance Collective has been holding regular Monday dances for about 6.5 years.
Pop Wagner and Bob Bovey had a band at the time called Mad Jack and the Black Label Boys. And they performed with caller Gail Heil, who had moved up from St. Louis to marry Bob. And she in St. Louis had been part of the original Mound City String Band. And here you'll see here, she's calling a visiting couple square. So from that Southern tradition, but she's including figures such as Ladies' Chain with opposite couples. So the revival here is borrowing figures from many different traditions.
Your left hand. Give your partner right to a right and left grin. Keep on going around that square when you meet your partner. Turn around and a promenade home, go around the town. Couple number one, do a bounce and swing in the middle of the floor. Then lead on out to the right of the ring in a circle of four. One time around, it's a one time around, don't go no more. Now inside arch and the outside under, duck and dive, and don't shoot blunder, over and under. Couple number one, swing in the middle when you're all through. Go on to the next, that's what you do. On to couple three, circle up four, one time around in the middle of the four. Now do-si-do with the opposite Joe. Do-si-do your own. And a ladies' chain across the hall. Now chain them on back, don't slip and fall. And a couple number one, keep on going out to the next. And a circle up four, it's a circle up four. As you did before, one time around, and I don't go more. Inside arch and the outside under, over and under, and don't shoot blunder. Duck and dive across the floor.
That Monday night square dance continues, and occasionally they've come up with some new original variations here.
Everybody
Out in the Northwest, about 25 years after Sandy Bradley, there was another influential leader to emerge, the late Bill Martin.
Into the middle, scare that guy. Now face your partner, do-si-do. On to the corner, seesaw.
I got a different approach to this than like a historian or a folklorist or somebody who wants to revive square dancing. I'm not interested in reviving square dancing. My philosophy is it's a party first and a dance second.
What I consider the real first community dance here in Portland, I think it was 2001, and got Bill Martin and Foghorn Leghorn to play the dance, and it was packed. I mean, we filled the place.
And we went up there and played for this dance, and those guys got so excited about it. They couldn't believe how cool it was to play this great old-time hillbilly music that they really loved, and to see this dancing that went with it. It was a perfect match. I'm standing there on stage watching all these people come in to the dance hall, and I thought, whoa, these aren't the kind of people that usually come to these dances. People there with, piercings all over the place, and they just had a blast.
Bill's influence can be felt through younger callers: Caroline Oakley, Charmaine Slavin, T-Claw Crawford. Charmaine and T-Claw are now the new coordinators of music and dance at the John C. Campbell Folk School. Michael Esmerio, whom we saw there. Here's a little of T-Claw.
Up and back, and back to back. Everybody swing around. Drown an egg, and get me a glass of lemonade.
There are square dances now that have started up around the country. The square dance in the District of Columbia might get 500 dancers on a given night. These are some of the examples. And on the Square Dance Project, we have a listing of some of them. But if you look, you'll find them all over. I'm not showing videos here in the interest of time, but it's a thriving scene. Old time music, simple dances, usually big sets, Southern big sets, and some for a couple squares. And I'd like to leave you with just four final thoughts and questions. This one that I put at the end of most every one of these talks: a tradition that doesn't change will die. At what point are the changes so great that the tradition's no longer recognizable? What role can each of us play to keep square dance, and by extension, other forms of country dance, alive in the future? And as you think back on Northern, Southern, Eastern, Western, traditional, modern, they all have some elements in common. And that's what I'd love us to focus on. It's so easy. I live mostly in the contra dance world, and it's easy for contra dancers to put down modern square dancers. It's just as easy for modern square dancers to put down contra dance. They just do the same thing over and over, or traditional squares. It's boring. And I'd like us to concentrate on what we all have in common. And we can talk about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm happy to announce I had an email from Katie German confirming that, in fact, Country Dance and Song Society is going to take over sponsorship of the Square Dance History Project, something I've been working on for the last dozen years. And there's nearly 2,000 items. We keep adding to it. But it's nice to know that it's going to continue on into the future so that this collection of resources aren't lost. If you're interested in square dance history, I'll be at Dance, Music, and Spice at CDSS Camp this summer. I'll be doing 2 sessions a day of English country dance and 1 session each day of country dance history, which will include English country, contras, and squares. There's some wonderful, wonderful stories there. I'd like to thank CDSS for sponsoring this. I'm sure that many of you watching are already members. For those of you who are not, I would encourage you to support it. It is a terrific organization. It's supported the Square Dance Project, but more than that, it's the finest organization in the country, I believe, promoting traditional conchas and squares. If you're a modern caller, you're probably already a member of Caller Lab, but please support CDSS. And as always, get in touch. The last couple of weeks, I've had several long email exchanges and phone calls with friends from around the country who have, in a very gentle way, corrected some statements I've made or asked me perhaps it should be worded a little bit differently, and that's how I learn. I'm aware that I'm presenting a popularized version of this, but I love hearing from people who know more about it in a given area than I do. So thank you, and please stay in touch. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take any questions that come up at this point.
Thank you, David, for this great presentation tonight and for the last two as well. Before you ask all of your questions, just to let you all know, I will be sending in a follow-up email with a link to the recording of this week's presentation and the previous two. I will share the chat from this evening. There's lots of good information in there and any links that David has shared. And thanks to all of you for coming and for supporting programming like this. My follow-up will also include a survey that I'd love for all of you to fill out. It will just ask for your thoughts about this presentation, and also what would you like to see from CDSS in the future for online presentations. And I will also share David's email address with his permission. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to shut the recording down and then we can have time for chatting and questions.